Boom. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be talking today about this controversial fellow. Richard Hart was yesterday, sued by the SEC. Now, I made a tweet yesterday that blew up. Because Richard is such a controversial figure, hated and loved, I thought it would be fun to share my thought. It'd been a while since we've been back in the studio. I just got everything set up. So let's sit down and straw man and share who I think the real enemy is here. So straight from the sec.gov litigation website, we're taking a look at number 25794. SEC charges Richard Hart with misappropriation of millions of dollars of investor funds of unregistered securities. Now, most people right away jump into this and say, oh, look, Richard's bought watches, sports cars, all these very expensive things from around the world. And he got all that money from misappropriating funds, all these private jets, and all these things that are going on. And it would be an easy, logical step for the layman to make if you didn't know the potential gains that were possible from even mediocre style investments. Now, I don't want to get too much into however Richard procured these funds, but let's say you put $1 million into Fetch.ai or Seller or Harmony One or Matic or any number of other tokens in early 2020. From trough to peak, you were seeing gains in excess of hundreds and 1,000x at some cases, like Axie Infinity. If you put $1 million in any of these, you were walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars. Spending $12 million doesn't seem that excess if you just brought in $200 million. Now, I don't know where the funds came from. Richard has constantly said that he did not sell any of the hex. Again, I'm not a blockchain sleuth. I'm not going to check right now. What I want to do is point my finger back at the SEC, because Richard, I don't think is the one that should be on trial here necessarily. Richard's provided a lot of great insight. I actually kind of made fun of one of the, I was like, wow, Richard's been one of the great ideas to listen to. He's brought a lot of great sentiments to the table. And whether you like him or not, he's an intelligent and charismatic person who's built something that's quite interesting. Now, a lot of people I saw jumped on board on Twitter like, oh, well, now he's just spending money. He's like, look, the price has dropped 90%. But I should remind you that, you could have been investing in Amazon in the early 2000s at the peak, thinking, oh, yeah, I figured out Amazon is going to change the world, and still lost 90% and then been right 10 years later. And this is one of the difficult things is you can't judge a book by the fact that it's gone down by 90%. So what was Richard Hart trying to build? Now, will go on to say, aside from the misappropriation of funds, is what they're trying to build is a blockchain certificate of deposit. So what's a certificate of deposit? This is a savings product that earns an interest on a lump sum for a fixed period of time. Because the money must remain untouched for the entirety of the term or risk penalty, fees or lost interest. These are usually of a higher interest rate than savings accounts and an incentive for lost liquidity. Now, Richard's made great points about why a CD is a great way to try to build this. There's a digital version of it. Now, the problem again here is that if we think Richard is the enemy, then the people we're friending up with are these guys. And I thought it was pretty clear among the Bitcoin community that these guys are the enemy. So if you're now befriending the enemy to think that Richard's the enemy, let's say a scam or not, let's just throw both possibilities on the table, although that's not what I'm alluding to. Just say either thing could be possible for the clarity of, let's let the courts and judges decide exactly what the settlement is, because we've seen this before. Library settles $111,000 in civil fines, or EOS raised some $4 or $5 billion to only pay a $24 million civil penalty. Great, raise $1 billion, pay a $24 million fine. This sounds great. That's a great deal. I mean, and this is the problem. People have forgotten so naively that what the regulators are there for is not to protect the customer, but protect the larger banking interests. Their job is to take money from the people that they regulate, not to save or protect any investors. That's their guise of a do-good mention. But we have to remember the road to hell has been paved with good intentions, and we have regulator after regulator for the past 3 years seemingly being pushed through the scales by that monetary deposit in their bank accounts of, if we regulate an industry and then just get paid all that money from the industry, hey, lo and behold, what do? All we do as regulators is expedite the process for monopolization, and this is the same banking cartel. No different. So it's ridiculous to me to see these people that gang up on Richard, but who are supposedly part of the Bitcoin community. Because for whatever Richard's done, these people are 1,000 times worse. And the banking cartel and system that we're supposed to all be here to help, like, change the way money works and the way we look at what a CD might be, right? Or some type of certificate of deposit. And these are not abstract thoughts to think that if we have better money in things like Bitcoin, maybe we can build an entirely new monetary system. So these are good questions to ask as well. I think what's problematic is that some of the things that Richard did, I spoke with a lawyer, and they kind of overstepped the specific boundaries of what makes a security a security. And through this, I was actually really excited to find this video. Now, Richard made a bunch of great points here. And again, just to clarify my position, let's just take this as a standpoint. If the enemy of my enemy is my friend, who am I going to pick as my friend right now? Because if I'm picking the SEC and the banking cartel as my friend right now, I do not feel like I've done any justice to why it is I bought Bitcoin in the first place, which is that the overarching monetary system is run by like an elite cabal, or even if it's just if they're not an elite cabal, the fact that it's just run by a small group of people is detrimental. So let's say Richard is a scammer. I don't think that he is, but again, we're just hypothesizing contextual events so that we can try to make a point here. If that's the case, I still see the SEC as not someone to like stand on a pedestal, right? So there needs to be better ways to decipher these things. And I don't think that Richard Hart has created a scam, although we're going to let the courts decide, because we've seen how these things get settled, and it's pretty mild. It's pretty tame. These are slaps on the wrist, and great. It sounds like a great deal. Let's read. SEC orders blockchain company to pay $24 million for. Again, these are different. They've levied different attacks against Richard, but just again for fun here, a Virginia and Hong Kong-based ICO. How much did they raise? They did not register as a security. Blah blah blah. Okay, and they raised like $4.2 billion and paid $24 million. So he'll have to pay like maybe $7 million. So. And again, I don't think, again, that's just if they can prove that he misappropriated funds. And there's a pretty easy argument to say that he could have easily made that amount of money in between 2020 and 2021. Like, it's not outrageous to think that that's possible. So according to the SEC, Hart began marketing Hex in 2018. And this is, again, where I think things get tricky. And what I want to do is share now some of the conversations that Stuart Adelrodi shared. Now, he does after office hours. So I'm just going to play this at 1.5x speed and make a little conjecture here, because he basically explains what Richard Hart was trying to share. And I want to interject with what I think Richard might have done in terms of vocalizing that changed that. I could be wrong. I have no idea. Again, I'm not rooting for the SEC here. I hope that he wins and has to pay some measly fine just to show again how useless the SEC is. Because, so rock on, Richard. Anyways, and then let's take a look at why the SEC is wrong and why I think what they're doing here is probably totally out of line.
Let me break this down a bit. The law lists a bunch of things that are securities. That list includes things you ordinarily think of, like a share of stock. Why is a share of stock always a security? If you own a share of stock in, let's say, Apple owes you a fiduciary duty, and you can hold Apple accountable if they don't fulfill those obligations.
Great. So there we go. What makes a security? There's a contract between two parties who can be held liable for that fiduciary responsibility of the idea to provide profit back to the shareholders. It's pretty simple, right?
That's true no matter how you bought the stock or who sold it to you.
And that's true again. So what he's saying is that these specific things that create a vehicle make this stock that particular fiduciary contract regardless of how you got it.
The law also includes something called an investment contract in the list.
And this is important too, because this is a separate, different way to package an idea or a vehicle that you want to share.
Of things considered a security. An investment contract is not like a traditional share of stock. And anyone who tells you that, well, let's just say they're trying to...
And this is the problem. Again, if the SEC is a regulator that's there to protect the banking cartel, why are they doing some of this? They're doing it to maintain public relations, look like they're doing something productive while protecting their friends. Because I'm pretty sure we just saw, what do they do? Dropping charges against Sam Bankman scam fraud. Did not drop all the charges. No, not all charges, but some of them. The campaign finance charges. Oh, you mean the charges that were there for political where he gave like hundreds of millions of dollars? That's not what he's going to get pinged on. Again, remember, we have to remember who the real enemy is in these conversations. And there's something else going on here. So I would not very quickly take the side of the SEC and feel proud about it here if I was, but anyways, because here we go.
Investment contracts are contracts that I sell to you with the promise that I'm going to take the money you gave me and do things to increase the value of your investment. I can take a bunch of orange groves and sell those to you. That's not an investment contract. Or I can sell you some of those orange groves as part of a larger set of promises to cultivate those groves, sell the oranges, and distribute the profits back to you. That's an investment contract. So, orange groves alone, whether I sell them to you or you buy them on an exchange, no investment contract. The very same orange groves, coupled with a promise that I sell directly to you, that I am going to work to make those orange groves profitable, that entire bundle of promises is an investment contract and therefore a security.
So this is the part where things get a little bit gray on how you meet the prong of the investment contract then becoming a security. Because if I'm on a live stream saying I'm producing this product, or even though the product is being launched, there is some nuance there. Now, they have to meet all the criteria, and this is where it becomes a bit more difficult.
But the orange groves alone are still just orange groves. Some would like you to think that a digital token can in and of itself be a digital asset security. It can't.
So right there again, Hex by itself is not a digital asset security. So first they would have to prove that, let alone if he misappropriated funds, which I think should be somewhat easy to prove. Although again, I'm not sure with the way that the EOS claim was done. They just told them they were like making it was a stupid decision by investing, and calling something a sacrifice might classify as that. So anyways, we'll continue here because
standing alone, it's just a commodity or a virtual currency. As a virtual currency, you may use it for a payment. As a commodity, you may trade it like gold or oil or pork bellies. Confused? Well, I don't blame you, because some have been doing their best to confuse you.
Right, exactly. So this is the big difference, is how you were basically onboarded into the idea is of a big difference. If you're interacting with a digital protocol like code, it's not a person per se. And this is where the separation starts to get a little tricky, and where the SEC has been making confusing statements and arguments, also why they're losing parts of the cases.
For years, because the Securities and Exchange Commission only has jurisdiction over securities, not orange groves, and they don't like that. Like a hammer, they want everything to be a nail. But the law doesn't work that way. While retail holders of crypto certainly deserve protection from bad actors, not all roads lead to the SEC.
Right, yes. And this is the point. The regulators are the ones who are the larger enemy here, because they've gone off the rails. I think it's clear to most people now that almost every field of interest, if you have someone who can make more profit than the slightly less profitable truth, you're going to find conspiracies. You're going to find conflicts of interest about how those people make profit. And that's part of human nature, which is why the regulators were set up. But one of the large problems is the SEC, the regulators, are working for the exact people we set out to start fighting with Bitcoin in the goddamn first place. So as soon as you align yourself with the people like that we're actually up against, it just doesn't look good, you know? So I don't know. We'll finish this, but I think he's made a great argument here. How these are presented is going to be a very nuanced conversation around each participant's access to the internet, because you can participate with a whole bunch of things on the internet that don't put you in direct connection with the other participant. Were Richard Hart's videos overstepping that line? Does he meet all those prongs of the Howey test? I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. I don't think so. I think some of them I've seen for sure, but you have to meet all of them from what I understand. So I don't know. I just wanted to rant on that because I thought it was weird that the Bitcoin community was like, yeah, the SEC. I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, even if Richard was a scammer, or let's say they got a scammer, like, I'm not pro SEC. Like, this just sounds ridiculous. It's like, it would be the equivalent of all of a sudden, like, let's say a bunch of the Nazis did something you were stoked about, and you're like, yeah, Nazis. No. This is, you can't conflate the ideas like this. Be like, because they're attacking my friend. It's like, no, bro, it's just a bad look. Like, I don't support the SEC. I think they're wrong here. I don't think that they've got a great case. Probably some settlement and a fine just because they're a big institutional body. I don't know. It'll be fun to watch. But I'm rooting for Richard Hart here because let's remember why we started and who the kind of the real enemies are. It's this ancient banking cartel. Don't gang up with them to be like, yeah, that guy. Like, what fuck? That's just garbage, bros. Anyways, that's my thought. Like, even with like, okay, I don't know. Let's say you lost a bunch of money because of Do Kwon or something. That's your last sentiment. That's your fault, motherfucker. Don't like look at someone else and be like, oh, please save me. Like, just learn the lesson. And that's what more people need, is they need education, not regulation. And education is hard to come by because it takes experience. And experience might mean you get burned or hurt or fall or trip or any number of things that happen in your daily life where you're risking just to be there. So I think people need to take accountability for their own actions and stop blaming other people. And definitely don't side with these villains, motherfuckers. Bing. Anyways, deal with the Arcane Bear. Just a thought. I just want to share a thought because, it was a popular tweet and I got the studio set back up. So here we are. Give us a thumbs up. Share your thoughts. What do I know? You guys probably know a ton more than I do. So let me know what you think. Share more articles. And now that this spot's set back up, we'll see what happens. You guys seem to like all the outside videos, so I'm going to do a little bit of both, see which one you guys like, and then I'm just going to aim down that direction. And then we're going to start a new podcast so I can continue to talk to physicists and virologists and biologists the way we did back in 2017, because I miss it. Thank you all for joining us. And we've got some chart stuff we'll do again too, because there's some market sentiments I wanted to take a look at. I think it's probably important now too. Even we're taking a break. We went from a 20 up to 30. Let's take a look and readjust. Awesome. Thank you, Bear family. We'll see you all again soon.